There are a couple of people we really want to be best friends with at a rehearsal. You want to be a best friends with the event coordinator, you want to be a best friend with the DJ, and you want to be a best friend with somebody in the wedding party who's wicked bossy. You need to find that person who is going to be your best friend. It could be the mother of the bride, it could be the sister of the bride, it could be somebody in the bridal party who is going to, probably needs a job, and who is going to make sure that everybody is lined up correctly, and that's not necessarily the event coordinator. It's going to be the person who knows who's supposed to be on the left, who's supposed to be on the right. Yes?
One point I'm going to bring up right now. The most important reason for having a rehearsal is specifically for that reason. Okay?
That's it.
All right?
That's it.
If anybody, if you're doing weddings and you're just starting out at it, it's important to have a rehearsal because you know the players in advance.
Right. We're not there to go through the entire ceremony because it takes all of the mystery out of the ceremony. So we're there really to show people, yes,
Excuse me, I think that we all do things differently.
yes, sir.
But I found 99% of the couples that I have want to go over the ceremony, with exception maybe their vows or something, or keep something special to gift of flowers. But they want to hear how you're presenting it. So if there's any changes, they can do it right then and there, and you can go home and change the ceremony.
Okay, okay. Point taken. Point taken.
I find too, if people are using readings, it's crucial to have them read it that night or before.
That I will
Otherwise, they don't do it loud enough, they haven't practiced, they're going to show up.
One thing I always insist, there are a couple of people who I insist are always there. Anybody under the age of 12 has to be there with their parents. And anybody who has a speaking part, a reader, has to be there. Those people I expect to have on site. I always provide the reading for them. I also print I have a separate copy for them for the day of the ceremony. But no, I will go, I'll go through the order of the wedding, but I don't go through all of the wedding. Okay, but I'll go through the beginning, I'll go through the consent, but I don't go through the entire ceremony all the way through. Never say the vows, but that's just me. But the children are very important, and they're there for two reasons. They need to go through it once so it's not brand new to them when they go down the aisle. And number two, so they're not afraid of me when they get down the aisle. Because I'm going to be that large black thing in the robe at the end of the aisle. And honestly, you see a 2-year-old and they look at you, and if they haven't seen you before, they go screaming down the aisle in the other direction. It's very distracting to the bride, to the groom, and to me. It's like, oh no, come here, come here, come here. You know, and you have to drag some little kid down the aisle. So they really need to be rehearsed, and they need to know who to run to once they get there. But really, the bossy person is also somebody, it's also good if the bossy person is the mother of the children, okay? So, when I start a rehearsal, I start in the middle, I don't start at the end or the beginning. I start and have everybody line up where the bride and groom want to have the people at the ceremony, okay? So, all of my attendants, I need them up here. Bride and groom. Do I have? I need to get this, let's see. All right, I'm gonna be here.
You're on this side?
Let's see, who do we have here? You can be the best man?
No, I'll do whatever you want, but you.
Are you gonna be the best man?
Yes.
Okay.
Best woman.
You're the maid of honor?
Whatever.
Right,
Are you the best woman?
absolutely.
Sure, right?
Okay. So, when I line people up, and I can't do this in front of the microphone, when I line people up, I like to make sure that it's who the couple wants on the right places, okay? And I also like to make sure that we all know that we're standing for Come on, you and Barbara have been married long enough. Jeez,
Enough times.
okay. So we're kind of facing in, and we're attractively positioned. Attractively positioned. Okay. So that the photographers can get a really nice view. Isn't that nice? Like really pretty, isn't it? Oh, give it to them. They did it right the first time. I always say there's a rule. I have a huge rule. No gum.
And no
No
sunglasses.
gum.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the bride or the groom or either side, does it matter? What side they're
She's
supposed to be
there,
standing
he's
on?
there. She's there,
It
he's
doesn't
there.
matter?
She's on my right, he's on my left.
To answer your
Right,
question,
That's
it
how it's
doesn't
supposed to
matter.
be?
Yeah.
According to the
Because he
scene.
has to have his right hand free for his suit.
Well, I knew about the seating, so when I just,
Okay.
so, okay.
I can't hear you, see, we got the microphone.
Do I mention about cell phone?
Oh, yes, okay, but that's part of, okay. I don't do that as a rehearsal,
I do.
Huh?
I do.
Okay. But before I start a ceremony, when I go down the aisle, because of course we go down the aisle before anyone does. When I get down the aisle, and of course then they know that the wedding is supposed to start, the first thing I tell people is to mute their cell phones. All right, I said the wedding is about to begin. Please, in honor of the bride and groom, please mute your cell phones. Better? Okay. Now, once I get down here and I have everybody in their place, I briefly go through the outline of the ceremony. We don't have any readers, so that's good, but I will tell people, I start out with an address, I'm gonna go through the address, then I'm going to ask Murray and Barbara for their consent. I'll go through the first few sentences of consent, and then if we have a reading, I'll talk about we're having a reading, and this is what it's going to be about. And then we're going to exchange our wedding vows, and I'll walk through that, and then we'll have an exchange of rings, and then I will ask, who has the rings? You have the ring and you have the ring. And so I'll explain to you when I'm going to ask you for the ring, when I'm going to ask you for the ring, and then I'll talk to you about handing off the ring. Okay? And I'll say, I need to have you hand Marie Barbara's ring first. Okay? So we simulate this. We practice handing off the ring. Okay? And then we go through the ring ceremony to make sure everybody feels comfortable with it. Just pretend.
Yeah, I don't want to get it stuck.
Okay. And then I have, okay, and then Murray. Okay. Okay. And then if there's any special ceremonies, if we have like a sand ceremony, a rose ceremony, or whatever, and it's set up differently, and we're gonna pretend we're having a rose ceremony. We're gonna do it over here. I say, Murray and Barbara, please join me over here. And so we simulate the rose ceremony. Rose ceremony, and they usually go through this one, through the verbatim. All right. And then take your places again. Isn't it? Okay. They're laughing too hard, you know, this is a hard group.
We did that.
Okay.
We were
And then I ask you to join hands with your roses, don't cripple anybody. I pronounce you husband and wife. Okay, and actually, I would have to do it this way because they're facing me. And then, I pronounce you husband and wife, I present you to the audience, and then we go to the processional.
What about the bridal kiss?
No.
Do I have
I'm sorry.
Kiss you both. And now I'd like to process that way. And I give people, depending upon how it works, I give people, if it's depending upon the venue, a fairly long photograph. There's so much. And,
Right.
Oh, no, don't get down yet, Lucia, don't get down yet. No, don't get down yet, go back to where you were. Because that is actually how, that's, now we do the processional, go back. Okay, now.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so, groomsmen, you come out with me. And Marissa. Marie, you're first. Groomsmen next. No, he's not Okay, so, wait a minute, you're next. Because what we did is we just practiced how to line people up for the
He's the maid of honor. It changes the sexes.
Okay, you're in front of us.
Going in.
Okay, so, I walk in with the men, all right? So we walk in, are we ready?
Our best woman.
Walk like a man.
Walk.
Walk like a man.
Okay. You're there? You're there. You're first. Okay. Flower girl. Flower girl.
Behave yourself.
All right. Now Barbara. Please rise for the bride. Now let's do this.
Everybody get the tissue
Don't stop. Okay. Yeah, we are. So what I do is I do it at least once or twice, depending upon how comfortable they are, and depending upon the size of the wedding party. If you have, I've had some weddings where I've had like 12 on each side. That's like a major production. That's like Hollywood. It's
Photographer's nightmare.
I also practice parents. I go through all the parents and how they walk in. And then on the recessional, the last thing I do on the recessional is I recess the two family rows on each side. So I don't let anybody go until after the two family rows recess after all of the wedding party. And then I say, now you're free to leave. Okay? But a good rehearsal doesn't take any more than 20 or 30 minutes. There are a couple of cues that I expect in rehearsals. One, I expect everybody to be on time, so I tell the bride and groom to invite them there 15 to 20 minutes earlier. I expect them not to go to the bar while they're going to be at rehearsal. That's huge, because you can have like a massive, major issue with people trying to pay attention if they're,
Or the Patriots game.
or the Patriots game, half in the bag if they're trying to rehearse. I expect the readers to try out their reading on the rehearsal. So if they're not there, then I ask them to, I always go to the weddings about between 45 minutes and an hour early, and I will sit down and talk to the readers before they get. And if somebody is in the wedding party and they're not there, I ask the bride and the groom to give me a stand-in. So we always have a full wedding party, and then it's the stand-in's responsibility to talk to whoever is in the wedding party before the wedding to show them where they are. We have that place. So that wedding party is always filled for the rehearsal. I prefer to have a wedding rehearsal not the day before, but 2 days before. Any questions? 20 to 30 minutes max, because you're going to lose them after that if they're going to go out to dinner. Children absolutely have to be rehearsed. Absolutely have to be rehearsed. They're not going to do what you want them
More
to
than
do.
a couple of times, too.
Oh, yeah. And don't assume that because they do it right at the rehearsal, they're going to do it right, especially flower girls. If they have the little baskets with the petals, they're so cute. They're going to drop all the petals like in a ball right at the front, and then they're going to wander up the aisle. That's just what happens, and it's okay. It's cute, it's nice in the pictures, the families love it, but they're not going to drop those petals where they're supposed to. And if you can have a parent walk them down the aisle as far as you can, that's much easier. Much easier. Questions? Anybody have a rehearsal nightmare? No?
Not yet. Actually, I do.
You do?
I did a rehearsal at Hawthorne Country Club, and the coordinator never told the couple that the space they were having their ceremony in and their reception had been rented out for the same day as their rehearsal. And we were running the rehearsal and guests from the wedding were walking right through. And I went over to the coordinator and I said, we're having a problem, they're interrupting. And she said, well, they paid us money to use that space. We can't tell them they can't go through there. And part of the problem was, half of the wedding party showed up a half hour late for the rehearsal.
That's
That's the
awful.
problem.
Yeah,
The
that is awful.
coordinator never told the couple that they only had a half hour for the rehearsal. It was really rude, and the bride came stomping through. I was waiting for her to start trouble, but that was the worst one that I've ever had.
Well, I think one of my biggest challenges is a couple of places where I officiate a lot, is a hotel in Gardner. And the walk up to, that's the gazebo at the Colonial, the walk out, they walk the bride out from the front door, it's gotta be like a quarter of a mile. And so, now they drive the bride, but the wedding party has to walk all the way out, and so you have to plan ahead. But I always pace it out. If it's a new venue for me, I actually pace it out, especially for the men,
Yeah.
to find out how long that walk is between where I'm going out and then where I'm going to stand. And then also, if there are any obstacles in the way. Tower Hill Botanical Garden in West Boylston is absolutely gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. They have one location, one venue there, it's called the Hidden Garden, and if it's in the summertime, they have a fountain. And the best thing you can do if you get a wedding there is to tell them to shut the fountain off. Laugh all you want to, you have to shut the fountain off, because it's loud, but it's very distracting because then you walk in these stairs, and then you walk down to the front. And it's actually not an easy walk if you're wearing heels. But you also have, if anybody's handicapped and they're guests, you have to accommodate extra time to get them in there. And I had one wedding there where they had probably 4 or 5 people in wheelchairs, and it had been muddy. And we were very late simply because it took so long to get people in, but the night before, it was dry. So the rehearsal went well, and then the wedding was painfully delayed,
Fruitlands Museum has a fountain too, and they try to have you have the ceremony right in front of the fountain.
Yes, I was right in front of the fish pond. I kept on thinking, one bad step, and I'm in big trouble. Any other questions about rehearsals? Yes?
Hi, Donna. Usually on Saturday weddings, they book them on Thursdays for a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I had a board meeting, and I couldn't attend the rehearsal, which killed me because it was at a beautiful function. So, understandably, I couldn't make it. So the function manager was the one who ran the rehearsal. And unknown to me, she told the father of the bride that he shouldn't move until I said, who's going to give this woman away?
Really?
Yes. So, not knowing that, because that's such an old-fashioned thing, and so I wouldn't even think to ask anyone, to be honest with you. So when they looked beautiful, and they all, it was outside and everything, they got up to me and I said, okay, and he was just looking at me with this dumb look on his face, and I didn't know, that he had been told this, and I'm like, okay, Dad, you can have a seat. And he got so flustered because now his cues are off, and he doesn't know what to do. Should I stand here? Should I wait for me to ask him? He got so nervous, he just turned around, stepped on her train, almost tripped, went back to his seat, and after the ceremony, I was trying to figure out why that happened, and that's when they told me that the function manager had told them that. So, learning from that experience, I always now when it's a venue like that, I always say to them, practice with the dad. When the dad walks you up, okay, Dad, this is what you're going to do. It's up to you, but I'd like you to you know, greet your future son-in-law, you know, shake his hand, turn to your daughter, give her a kiss, maybe put their hands together, and then you can go and sit down. So I think the dad is really an important person to speak to during the rehearsals, because
It's also lessons
It was
learned about the event
embarrassing.
coordinators.
yeah, and I was just shocked at the whole thing, and I felt so bad because they were friends of mine,
Yeah.
but I never expected, you know, and he was like just looking at me like, you know, aren't you gonna ask me, you know?
I sometimes ask the bride if she has a long train, and if she does have an exceptionally long train, I put the father on the other side.
That's always a good idea.
I was gonna add to that, I always tell the father, watch for the train, I've had to catch a couple brides in the past,
Yeah.
like full on like, well,
Great video.
Kind of switching gears, I have a question about outdoor weddings. So in fact, this is my first year as JP. I had a bride and groom that wanted to get married outdoors, but had a reception hall for a venue. So I met them at the outdoor location. It was in a park, on, you know, on the water, that kind of thing. So, you know, probably because of my inexperience, I hadn't asked the question going into that rehearsal, you know, what the expectation of my role there, short of solemnizing the ceremony. But when I got there, the person said, oh, the wedding coordinator at the function hall, because I asked them who's gonna help coordinate here, that the coordinator at the function hall said, oh, that's my job. So I'm wondering, is that typically the job of JP? And again, probably my lesson learned was, okay, now I need to vet that out up front early during the interview. But is that generally what the JP's role is, to be up there coordinating at the outdoor venues, kind of where to go, what to do?
It depends actually on the venue and the event coordinator. Some of them, if they're really a wedding planner and event coordinator, and it depends on their experience too. Some of them are very young, and they're really event sellers, right?
Right.
And what they're doing is they're selling an event, and a lot of them don't have the planning skills that help them with the bride and groom and go through the whole process. That's why when you go at least to the rehearsal, if they're having a rehearsal, I go early, I sit down and I talk to the event coordinator, and you know, if she's the age of my kids, I kind of take over myself. If they're like a drill instructor, you can tell, I mean, you can tell the good ones. Then I feel free to let them do the coordinating, and then I run the rehearsal from the ceremony perspective. But I find that there is in some venues there's a lot of turnover in that role. So it, you know, it's kind of catch as is catch can. You have to kind of judge that.
But if you have, like in this case, the venue, the reception hall was
Way
10
away?
miles away.
Yeah.
So this was at a park in another city.
Oh, then it's
town.
up to you. It's you.
Okay, so
It's
that
you.
was the thing, and interestingly, because she looked at me, was like, I would, and again, my thought is being a bride many years ago, is how do you not think about the locale and the setup? Long and short of it, I ended up really like 180ing the whole wedding piece, because I was trying to figure out how she could give it. It was like sitting there going, oh my God, if I only had a little bit more time to think about it, it would have been, you know, of course, 12 people on each side, and like wrangling pigs, for God's sake. It was like, you couldn't get them all together. It was insane. Oh my God, you need like wine just to do this. Seriously, I was like, this is like, it's like a bad dream. But it went through beautifully, and then I also found out at that moment that, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant now, 6 months. It was just like, this is crazy. So I didn't throw that in the mix. But yeah, so that's why I figured, is that the job of the JP? And that's something you have to vet out
It
early
can
on.
be, yeah. Actually, I ask, especially when I find out the venue, when I interview my couples and they tell me what the venue is, if it's outside, I make the assumption that I'm gonna do all the planning. If it's at a venue, I ask who their contact is at the venue. But if it's either a home wedding, or it's outside, or if it's a rod and gun club. By the way, I don't do those anymore. If it's a place that isn't typically a wedding venue, I assume I'm gonna do all of the coordinating. So I make that assumption. If there's somebody there, hooray, I don't have to do as much work. But if if it's either a home wedding, small wedding, off-site, if you will, then I just assume I am. Any other questions? And by the way, I put in more time for the rehearsal than I do for the wedding. Yeah.
I just wanna add this to the interview, just for new JPs. When they tell you where the venue is, ask them for the complete address. Because they can tell you the wedding is at the Sonnet Inn, and the Sonnet in Fall River is not a town. So on the marriage license, it has to be Freetown. So there's a lot of things that you, and then you get married somewhere and you don't know the address. Like if you do Ned's Lighthouse in Mattapoisett, try and find the address. You're calling harbor masters and maritime coordinates. So to take the pressure off of you, ask them for the exact address of where this wedding is, so you can put it on the marriage license properly. Because I spent so much time backpedaling, trying to find this stuff, and I said 2016, I'm not doing this anymore.
Okay. We're actually over. It's time for a break. I invite you to go and look at